People back to Send It Rising Live. I hope you had the greatest vacation in the history of vacations. Speaking of vacations, you can actually see the Christmas wrap still in my corner. It was a good time. Speaking of vacations, Andrew, my guest today, was just in, I want to say Breckenridge, probably mispronouncing that, where there was 2 feet of snow, and he was going to wrap up his book. He was done. Dunzo. Here we go. We're going to put in the commas. That's a semicolon. Let's do this thing. Marketing book. And his publisher said, you know what? How about you don't try to complete this thing by the end of the year? Why don't you just take a deep Zen-like breath, Andrew, and just enjoy yourself? So he did. And he went out drinking and partying with the locals. And he is the marketing master. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to absolutely love him. Welcome to the show, the one and the only, Andrew Hindle.
Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks.
Oh my
That's a pretty
goodness.
good intro, man. I'm gonna have to follow that up with something pretty cool. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
So is writing a book like, is it nightmarish or is it peaceful? Is it
Well,
lovely? All these things.
there's a timeline to it, I think, and I didn't know it before going in. But essentially, it was peaceful, and it started out as like, oh, I'm gonna do like this art project, and I'll just, it'll happen when it happens, and like people aren't gonna be, I'm not gonna be beholden to lawyers and publishers and all this other stuff. And it started out as just me writing just for honestly as Zen, literally. And it kind of came along and came along. And then I got sick of looking at it at about like 60 pages or something. And so I hired a publisher, and then they went through it and they were like, this basically destroyed my soul with some of the edits. But she was right about everything. So essentially it's been, I guess you would call it just kind of like fleshing out the topics that I've written and really expanding on the ideas and making it actually, like actionable items from the book rather than just me rambling, which is what it started as. So yeah, it's been a process, and at this point I can say I'm really sick of looking at the document. Honestly, that's just where it's at. It's at like 100 and almost 120 pages now, and um it's just like you're in a box and you gotta claw your way out by adding commas and thoughts and stuff. But it's
I
almost
uh
there.
I had I had my brother edit my book, and his style was to write in all caps letters in
Oh
red
man.
and say
Oh,
things
that'll
like this section is bad, remove it, stuff like that.
that'll get your blood pressure. That'll get your
You
that's
know,
that's
and
pretty
then
much what I've been looking at, but not in all caps. So I think you had it
oh
worked
my
actually.
goodness. So is she relentless? So when you say publisher, I'm hearing editor. So what's the difference?
Yeah, so that's a good question. To tell you the truth, this is the first time I've worked with a publisher edit, but she does both. So she's editing, but also it's moving towards a goal of actually publishing it. So it'll be in the format of an actual paperback and then an audiobook as well. So essentially, I want to have both of those launch at the same time. Like I could have the paperback or just KDP on Amazon, just publish it as essentially a PDF or something like that. And that's actually what I was going to do originally. And then she was like, "No, you actually have something decent here," and I was like, "Oh, okay, that's cool." And so I guess I've been putting more time into it than I originally planned. But to tell you the truth, I don't know if there is a difference. I don't know the difference between a publisher and an editor. One, I think, actually just publishes it, and one, uh, you know, writes in all caps.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I've never worked with a publisher. I've spoken with someone who got picked up by like a legitimate, institution, and he's like, you would not believe. They're basically, to me, a publisher is they work somewhat as an editor, obviously, but they
Right.
make it so hard on you. Like that is their job, is to
Yeah.
be
Well,
just
that's
scrutinize this thing and just absolutely they're like the worst professor of English you ever had. at a university times a million, because
You know
I
the
think the
drill.
model today is, yeah, it's just wild. I mean, so do you like that kind of punishment? Are you happy that you're going down this path,
Yeah,
or not
dude.
so
Well, that's funny. I mean, you hit it right on. I mean, you're exactly right. That is what it is, and it is really frustrating. But ultimately, that the comments and everything like that are moving it closer to where it needs to be. So I can't really argue with it. It's just like more work, more work, more work, and also like, what is a do I put a deadline? Like I tried to put the deadline as the end of the year, and really, what I found is like, if you can't maintain the same tone of voice, kind of like I don't know what you would call it, kind of almost like a divine voice when you're writing, and then you kind of put deadlines on it and everything like that, and the voice changes and the tone is like, I'm hurrying to write this sentence versus like it's thought out. One of the biggest things I've noticed is I've had a couple of friends that have put out books, and it just when you open a book, I feel like the first thing that people do is like, oh, the sentence should have been edited, or it looks like it was rushed, or something like that, and that is a immediate ding to your like reputation, I think, just in terms of like, okay, did they put the thought into it or not? And so really, it's just been like, okay, like you said, take a deep breath and look at it and like actually think through, like, is this what I originally intended, or am I just like angrily writing something? So yeah, no, but you're exactly right. It is a lot like English class, where you don't know any. It's like you think you know enough to write a book, and then you find out you really don't. So,
I mean, it's I it my so the book that I wrote, I am proud of it. A lot of people
yeah,
said they
tell
really
me
liked it.
about it.
Well, I mean, so it's called Everybody's Doing It, Advertising
Oh, no
Redefined.
way.
Yeah, and
That's a cool title.
well, yeah, the premise is that we all advertise throughout our entire lives. Like when you're a baby, you cry, and that's your only advertisement. It gets you all your needs met. And then it
I
just
like
goes
that.
from all the different disciplines, from like sports to politics to everything, and just dissects what advertising is in all of those domains. So advertise comes from the Latin advertere, which means to turn towards. So anything that gets you to turn towards something is an advertisement.
Oh,
And so it just
okay.
kind of riffs on that for 100 pages. Um, and so I was happy with it, but some of the people that I know that are really smart, that read it, they're like, it's green. Like they're trying to be nice
Yeah.
to me.
Well, that's what
And
I've heard
it's
about mine
my
is it's
first
like
book.
you're at like a B minus right now. And I'm from like I have PhD friends that have, that I can kind of tap into, and they'll straight up tell me they're like, this sucks, or and that's kind of the feedback that I've gotten about mine is, essentially it's like, yeah, well, this could pass as a master's thesis, something like that. But
Sure.
you're not writing at like the highest level possible. And I'm like, great, thanks. That's it.
Well, I mean, were you always a writer, or did you write this because it's what you do as an entrepreneur? You're supposed to write a book.
So I never liked writing as a kid, but it always like I always would do well in those classes. So like I've written, like I used to write for the newspaper at Texas Tech as an opinions columnist, however you say it.
Mhm.
But that was kind of like my first real writing gig, and essentially they would just give me topics, and then I could destroy it, or lift it up, or whatever the case was. So it was actually a pretty fun gig. And then I wrote like a creative story called The Old Man and the Chick-fil-A. It was like a Hemingway parallel, that I was supposed to do. So I was living on the fourth floor in an apartment above a Chick-fil-A. So I just yeah, but yeah, I guess writing by default seems to always like come back into my life,
Okay.
somehow. Um, and like I was a music producer for like I'm certified to teach Ableton Live, and I
Mhm.
was doing that, and it's really difficult to make money in that industry. It's like
Mhm.
extremely difficult, and I need to do something creative with whatever I do, even if I'm digging ditches. Like I need to lay down the tape first, or whatever the case is. I just like to think like about logical things, except outside the box, and writing is a good way to kind of illustrate that to other people. So
That's
Yeah.
cool. One of these things that's going viral on TikTok is these conversations between two people. One of them says, "Yeah, of course, I have an internal monologue, right? There's a voice in my head all of the time. It's constantly going." And the other person goes, "What? What are you talking about?" They're like, "Yeah, the internal monologue. You know, the voice in your head that's like constant, never shuts up. It just keeps going and going." And they're like, "I do not know what you're talking about. Like, what?" And so apparently,
Uh,
some subsection of the population simply does not have it. Like, they do not hear words of any kind
huh.
until they are spoken, and when they're reading, they don't hear anyone in their head reading anything. They literally just read the words, like, they just understand the words instead of hearing the words in
Hmm.
their head. And so, which are
Ignorance is
you?
bliss, I suppose.
So which are you? Do you have an internal
I'm definitely
monologue?
not the latter. No, I probably have multiple yeah. Oh, yeah. I can check that box. No, I definitely have a couple dialogues.
You know what? It
Yeah,
is so funny. You know, so talk to me about that. So does your mind just race all the time? Is it just
yeah,
going
yeah.
on?
Well, I have I mean, I've been diagnosed with like PTSD, so I don't know if that affects it, but I've
Uh-huh.
always have been an anxious person generally,
Mm, mhm.
and that's where like writing or creative outlets really help put the dialogue that's happening that I can't say, or that I won't say, and just put it down on paper, or whatever the case is, to kind of express that. But yeah, no, dude, I lose sleep all the time over stuff like that. Yeah, whether it's like client stuff or like personal stuff, whatever the case, I'm always thinking about something, so yeah, definitely, I would say I'm probably more of a, like, I spend more time thinking about things than talking about things. I'm an only child, and I spent a lot of time alone as a kid, so I was always, doing something right with my time. So always found ways to make the most of whatever I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think anxiety gets enough love. It definitely gets a lot of hate, that's for sure.
It's
But when
hard for
you
people
look
to
at
understand from the outside. It's like, just stop.
yeah. No, yeah, no,
Yeah.
I mean, you're right, you're right. It's like, because if I'm gonna hire, like, say, a surgeon, I want the surgeon who was just incredibly anxious all through his residency or her residency, where they were just like, "Oh, we're gonna get this right. We're gonna do this. We're gonna get this right. You know what I mean? We're gonna perfect this. We're gonna," and then they do. They perfect it because
Right.
I don't need the stoner chilled out. It's gonna be fine. Don't worry about it. It's cool. Not that big of a deal. Like
Yeah, no,
like
that's really, I'm on the same
that
page
anxious
with you
person is
there.
like, "I'll take that one, dude," at age 36, 38.
Right.
Um, there are huge benefits to anxiety, and it's baked into our psychology, for a good reason. It keeps you alive. Like, if you look at, like,
Yeah.
rabbits, they're anxious about you.
I was
Like,
gonna
they
say, my friend, he was like my trainer at one point, in college, and he would always say, he was like, yeah, animals are, you're supposed to be anxious because it keeps you alive. That's like why animals are always scared, because they're trying to stay alive.
yeah,
Definitely.
that's all we're trying to do. Stay alive, reproduce, get food, pleasure, just the basics. And so what's funny, and this is a very sort of like far out there spiritual slash psychological perspective, but loving the thing, right? So it seems like a paradox, but to love anxiety, right? So you take
Yeah.
one step back from anything and then you love that thing, right? For what it is. So there's a difference between loving being anxious, and like loving the anxiety itself, if that makes any sense. Like, oh, look at
No, it
that. Like,
does.
oh, there's
That's a new
there's
idea for
fear
me, but
again.
yeah,
Oh, hey, look, I'm afraid, Oh, isn't that
being
interesting?
aware, being aware
Mhm.
of your emotions. That is, yeah, it
Yeah.
needs
So
it
where do
needs
you
to increase.
so
I
if you
think
could just flip a switch and not be anxious anymore, would you?
probably not. No, no, I've never been asked anything like that, but no, I think in a lot of ways it's what differentiates me, or at least I feel like it. It's it's the own world that I live in, But no, I think it's what makes it, like, the book happen, or the business happen. A lot of things like that are just going off and doing things without not following the norm. essentially. So
Hmm.
yeah, definitely helps with
So
that.
so let's talk a little bit about the agency. So Stacked Deck, correct?
Yep. Yep, full
So
stack development company. Whenever I was before I had the company, I kept hearing the term full stack development, and at the time, I didn't go to school for like development work. I went to school for advertising and communications, and time and time again, like when I was working at an agency, I worked at two agencies before starting my own. And agency one, it was more like lead generation. Agency two, I was more of like back end work and not really client facing. But time and time again at agency one, I would hear like, we need this done, and then the agent like, we don't do that. And so to me, there's a huge, maybe not huge, but what I noticed, there's a niche that, or an opportunity that needs to be filled where like full service isn't happening. And that's basically where it all started. Was like I never really wanted to start my own business, honestly. Like it wasn't in the grand plan. um, but it was just a need that I saw with customers where it was like, okay, well, you got to hire a web guy for that, or you got to hire an IT guy for that, or you got to hire an advertising guy for that. And it just seemed like it wasn't ever all in one place. And so that's where, the full stack development, like, I have people that do that, and I'll do projects for that. And it's just kind of like a side service, custom work, stuff like that. And really what I focus on is growing the business. And so for some businesses, they need custom software built to grow. And some businesses, they already have that done. They already have a website, they already have branding, and they just want to scale from like 75K a month to 125K a month in revenue. And some businesses are just getting started and they need branding, they need a website, whatever the case is. And so I always try and custom tailor packages to each client. And so, putting the client first is really the most important thing to me.
yeah, the criticism I always get is, well, then you're not good at it, right? If there's a million different things that you offer. Well, like sometimes I'll be sitting
Exactly.
there in
I
a
hear
sales
that all the
meeting
time.
and they'll say, well, what are you best at? And I'm
Yeah,
like, oh God. Like, here's my answer to that question, which I just ugh, this question. Is I have staff members that are incredibly good at different things. Okay. So like
exactly.
it's not just me. I'm not the guy. Don't you understand me? Like I own the business. Like I haven't been doing Facebook ads myself for 5 years. So no, I'm
Right.
not good at Facebook. I haven't written a blog in like 4 years, so I'm probably not your best blog writer, but I'm an owner of a company. And so, yeah, Shalee has over a million views on, or a million likes on TikTok. Michelle was the director of marketing at Stations Casinos and manages like top high level marketing problems constantly all the time. All Todd does is develop websites. So,
Yep.
what are we
That sounds
best at?
familiar, man. Yep.
It's like, what do you want me to say? Like, it's such a weird question. Why?
It's
Like,
always,
I
to
don't
me, it's
get it.
I
Like,
always am like, well, what problem do you need solved? Because a lot of times when
yeah.
people, they're like, well, what are you best at? It's like, well, what are we trying? What are we getting at? What are you getting at? Basically, it's
Yeah,
like, well, are
yeah,
you trying to grow
exactly.
your
Because
business, or like, what do you like? What is the desired outcome? And then we can work backwards from that. Because
yeah.
like what I spent all my time doing in school was like research and focus groups, surveys, and kind of like turning data into money. And essentially like my career path has been more of like the literals, learning like websites and SEO and ads and stuff like that, stuff that they don't teach in school. And so really that's where I start all the time, is like research. And if that's not done, then you got to start collecting data. Like the first thing that I say is, if you have a list of existing or previous clients or customers, you don't need their name, but if you get their age, gender, location, how much they spent and within what time period, then that saves a ton of money on testing. And you still want to test with ads, and I mean, you already know this stuff, but that's my approach to it. Essentially, is like, let's look at the data we have. If there is no data, then we got to start collecting some, because everything should be, any decision you make in this world, like with a business, in my opinion, should be based off of some type of data, and not just like, well, I'm feeling blue today, so I think I'll post something blue, or whatever the case is. You just want to be decisive and deliberate about whatever color scheme you're using, whatever tone of voice you're using, all that stuff that a lot of people kind of like overlook at first, just because it's not, like you can't say, oh, well, I made this post and I lost this much revenue, or I made this much revenue off of one post. But as time goes on, it becomes a lot easier to tell when it is benefiting or hurting a company. And so my best case scenario is if no work has been done, honestly. Like one of my clients right now, they just launched like this new subsidiary company. And so I've been able to do all the branding, the social media, everything from scratch. And it's going really well. So I'm happy with that. Where I get a little bit caught up is if like a client is using, like I was talking about earlier, they have a website guy that's at a different company than the IT guy, that's at a different company than the advertiser, and none of them communicate. And so it's like, well, I'm now the fourth person on this. Just gets a little messy, but yeah, I just try and straighten things out and keep it online with the data, and it usually pans out pretty well.
Yeah, we have some relationships where we're part of a bigger team, but by and large, it's just the program. We'll just take the
Hmm.
whole program, whole digital marketing program. One of our biggest clients is an exception to that. They've got like a Google Ads person they've been using forever, and so we just do their SEO. Um, but yeah, it can be a little frustrating to have multiple hands in the cookie jar.
Yeah. Well, especially if they don't communicate. If they communicate, then it's a different story, but usually they don't. So, yeah, like I was looking at this hospital client, kind of did like just some consulting for them, and they had that exact scenario where basically they had been running Google Ads for, I don't know, a few years, and they had like $9 conversions, but there was no like tracking. Like within Google Ads, it stated $9
Right.
conversions, which is great, but then there's no like call tracking or CRM or anything like that. And so it's like, well, we spent like 60 grand this year on Google Ads, and we got this many phone calls, and I don't know if they got answered. So um, just tracking and like measurement is another big thing that I do and focus on, and try and get my clients to focus on, because it's like it's the most boring task, right? To like track stuff, but it's one of the most exciting things when you get to make money off of that data, because it's like almost a guarantee, you know. So that's where I try to focus for sure.
Yeah, CallRail is beautiful. I absolutely
Yeah.
love it. We use CallRail all the time. You get the person's name, a recording of the phone call. Hello. It's amazing. And so yeah, call tracking is a big, big
Yeah.
deal. And then tying it back to like a Facebook ad campaign, it's just like chess. Like how far down the rabbit hole do you want to go? Um,
Hmm.
you could literally spend a lifetime memorizing the lines of like every possible chess opening. Isn't that wild? And that's why these like Alpha Zero they're impossible to beat. They're unbeatable because they're like a million lifetimes in just one little computer.
Right.
I shouldn't say little computer, they're massive. Um, so do you think there's going to be artificial intelligence in the world of advertising more and more? What role do you think that'll play?
Yeah, I would say probably with Target. I've seen it with like ad copy actually. I don't know if you've
Hmm.
have kind of dipped into that or not, which I find to be strange of all the things that could have been automated.
Hmm.
But that's one thing I've seen, is where you essentially can enter in bullet points and then it will come up with ad copy for you. I don't know how reliable that is. And then there's even like like it's basically content oriented, which I figured it would be more data related, but no, I definitely think AI and advertise. I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things where you can argue creativity, and it needs a human element and everything, but for some businesses, frankly, it's just a matter of, we have this many dollars, we need to target this many people and in this area, and the ad, these days, like, the campaigns almost optimize themselves. um and so, I think there's still always going to be a human element involved. It's almost like an attorney, right? Someone has to mediate, between the different platforms and everything like that, where I think, like our careers would be in danger essentially, is if, like, Facebook is now metaverse or whatever. If they were to buy Google if they were to buy, TikTok or something like that, and then it all becomes one platform, and then almost like you have, the Google Ads guy and the IT guy and all that. It's now, if it's all under one roof, then it becomes a lot easier to, you know, automate essentially. And so that's where
Mhm.
I think it would get dangerous. But yeah, they're not communicating. All the different companies don't communicate, and they're at war with each other currently. So, someone has to mediate between the different platforms and everything like that. So, but it's definitely, I mean, it's a real possibility for sure.
I bet Google would love to track our eyeballs. I think that would be their happiest moment where they could just be like, "Yeah, that camera, we're gonna track exactly where on the screen you're looking at what times."
Dude, I did eye
I'm sure
tracking
they
studies, and it's like, it's insane. It worked, like, you can literally yes, that's a real technology. It's
yeah.
not,
Oh,
we're not far
yeah.
away from that if it's not already
Yeah.
happening,
I mean, we
honestly.
have it. It's just we can't get permission. So like Hikaru Nakamura, he is a grandmaster chess player, and he'll do these eye tracking episodes where like you'll see where he's looking, so you can look where he's looking and like literally see
Right,
what he's as he plays. But yeah, so for example, AI, if eye tracking was enabled, I mean, you don't even need that. So let's say the Google Ads AI is because for them, what gets a click, what doesn't, but a click is a big move. So there's probably,
right,
let's say they serve an ad and there's an amount of time that the person hesitates before scrolling down or where the mouse goes. Like, does the mouse like hover over the ad for a second or not? And all these data
right,
points that the AI can sum up to go, yeah, this kind of language is working for this particular ad. And then obviously when you set up conversions, that's the holy grail, like a phone call or something happens. But also like they click on the ad, they leave, 2 weeks goes by, now they do another search, it's related. They show up number 3 organically, they click on the organic result, still don't convert, they come back. You know what I mean? This whole like just the interconnectedness of the whole cycle. Um, Automation is going to do infinitely better than any human possibly could. We don't
right.
even live in that world. I mean, we don't even see that data. Like we'd be literally like we're space monkeys, man. We talked about this backstage. We're big monkeys hurtling through space, and there is this intelligence that's being born, out from under our feet. Our generation, dude, they're gonna look back on our generation and be like, "Well, that must have been a wild ride." At the dawn of the
Right,
internet,
yeah,
to be born,
right.
at this time. Are you kidding me?
It's a power that no one can seem to control, but everyone wants to. Yeah, that's yep. It's like the
Yeah,
new real
I
estate,
feel
honestly.
very secure in my job. Do you feel like you're
Yeah.
secure? Dude, I feel like there's no the dude, I feel like it's only up from here because people do not want to mess
Really?
with this stuff. Heck no.
Yeah. Well,
No.
that's
People
what.
do
So I
not want to
found
mess with this.
I found like both ranges. There's people that are like, I'm never hiring someone again, and I just want you to teach me. And then there's people that like
Mhm.
don't want anything to do with it. And so there's
Yeah.
money to be made on both ends of the spectrum. But no, yeah, I mean, I've been in business for like 2 years now, and I mean, there's ups and downs all the time. But yeah, I mean, if you're talking about like AI, yeah, I feel secure in my job for sure. I think there's just, it's a matter of like staying up to date with everything, right? So
Yeah. If I were a blog writer, I might think to myself like because AI is getting there slowly. There's some dude in some networking thing I talked to recently who was like, "Oh yeah, check it out." And if you throw it in a topic, it'll spit out something that's unique content, but it's not good. The content's not good.
okay,
Um, but it'll get there. I give it another like 5, 10 years, and you'll just be able to type in whatever you want, and it's gonna spit out content. And I spend like $4,000 a month on writers, right? And
yeah,
that's going away probably within that. But the second that happens, there's going to be a window of like 6 months to a year where you can develop a bunch of blog content and have hundreds of blogs on your site, and it'll do something SEO related, but that'll disappear, and it'll be what's the
huh,
word, taken over by what we're doing here, which is video live education, high quality video content, and then obviously virtual reality will take over.
huh, yeah, I agree with that. I hadn't thought about it like that, but yeah, no, definitely, that's pretty cool.
So anyway, 10:59. I want to thank Andrew for swinging by the show. It's been a lot of fun. And why don't you tell the fine folks where they can reach you if they want to talk to you?
Yeah, absolutely. You can go to my website, stackeddeck.com. It has one D in the middle, so make sure you delete the second D. Or you can email me at andrew@stackeddeck.com. And really thank you for having me on the show, Kellen.
Yeah, good times. People of the world, you know the drill. 10:30 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, Monday through Friday. If you're like most folks, you're listening after the fact, iTunes and Spotify and 12 other podcast platforms. You know we love you. Thank you for swinging on by, and thank you for being patient with us as I took an extended holiday break. It was a lot of fun, and we'll see y'all next time. Bye, guys.